Well, folks, welcome back to 3 Zen. Today I'm going to take a little bit of a departure from flying stories and tell you about a very, very dear friend of mine, Harry Schaller. Uh, in essence, this is a story about how Bob met Harry. I was flying for Northwest Airlines in 2006, so toward the end of my commercial career. And I happened to stop by a lumberyard on the way home, pick up this, that, or the other. And the guys behind the desk said, "Hey, Bob, if you got time, you really need to stop and meet Harry." And they'd been telling me for, some time, I guess. One of these days, Bob, you really need to stop and meet Harry. So Harry's was about a half a mile up the road from the lumberyard, and I had a little bit of time on my hands. So I decided that was the day I was going to stop in and meet Harry. So as I drove up by his house, I saw a sign out front, brown eggs for sale. So I thought to myself, well, what a great opportunity. I can meet Harry and maybe learn a little bit about raising brown egg chickens. I decided when I retired that that's one thing that I'd like to do, perhaps, is raise chickens. So I pulled in his driveway, found a place to park, and started walking out toward his shop. The shop door was open, and usually that's where you would find Harry anyway. Well, I got halfway to the shop, and out he came. He was kind of bent over, as he was inclined to do. And he kind of looked at me and taken my measure, I suppose. And he said, "Can I help you?" And I says, "Yes, sir." I said, "I stopped in to see what you could tell me about raising brown egg chickens." He says, "Well, you can't make any fucking money at it." And I said, "Okay." I said, "That being said," I said, "still interested in raising brown egg chickens." And then he got this silly grin of his on his face, as he was inclined to do. And at that instant, I knew I had a friend for life. That was in, spring of 2006. And for the next 7 years until he passed away, we were almost inseparable. Just became fast friends. Now, Harry had quite an interesting story behind him. In his youth, in his 20s, he had developed a cancer in his neck, and they had to go in and remove a tumor, and in the process, they radiated him a little bit too much, and he had to deal with that the rest of his life. And he was off for about a year until he recovered, and then he went back to work in the HVAC business, air conditioning business. Then one day he was up on top of a building, setting an air conditioning unit that was being lowered by a helicopter. Well, it turns out he needed to untether himself to get over to maneuver this unit to sit down on the bolts. So he told the guy down on the ground, he said, "Listen," he said, "just tell the guys in the helicopter to remain stable. I have to unhook here and get over and maneuver this thing around." He said, "Okay." So Harry untethered himself, went over and was maneuvering this thing, and perhaps a gust of wind or whatever hit the helicopter, and he revved it, and the resulting downwash blew him off the top of the roof. Well, it flipped Harry, and he fortunately landed flat on his back, which probably saved his life, but it broke his back. And so he went into the hospital for another year until they put a couple pins in his back and took care of him until he recovered again, until he could get back on his feet and so forth. But between the cancer and between the back injury, the people at the HVAC company just thought it best that perhaps he take a different direction. And they offered him disability and workman's comp and the whole package like that. Well, Harry said, "I won't have anything to do with it." He said, "I don't want workman's comp." He says, "I'm capable of working." And he said, "I enjoy working." And that was just the kind of man he was. So he taught himself carpentry. And he taught himself how to work with metal. And he taught himself all kinds of things. It's just amazing what that man knew. And he did it by reading and then going out and trying. And he taught himself so well that he became more or less the go-to guy for the replication of restoration projects throughout Toledo, the Toledo historical buildings. He could replicate baseboard, crown molding, trim, whatever you want. If he didn't have the blades, the shaper blades, he'd make them. Just unbelievable. But I just was in awe of the man, and I loved hanging around with him just to listen to him talk about things because I learned so much from him. But be that as it may, toward the end of June in 2006 and July, I began working on a chicken coop. And I built one out back, and he'd come over and take a look at it. Yeah, you need to do that. Yeah, look at that, and so forth. And yeah, that's going to work, and that'll do, and so forth. So we worked on it that summer of 2006. And then right around the 1st of September, I was all set for chickens. And one evening, I broke my hand. Damn it. So I went to the ER. They took care of my hand and so forth. And when I got home, there were 6 chickens in the coop. Harry had somehow heard that I'd gone to the ER to have my hand taken care of. And he just took it upon himself. He knew the coop was fixed. So he brings over 6 chickens and puts them in for me to get started with. And that was more or less the beginning of just a wonderful relationship and a wonderful friendship that I had with Harry Schaller for those 7 years. So as we continue on the channel here, I'm going to tell you a few more stories of Harry because they are just so precious. Thanks for tuning in. Talk to you soon.